Good morning, everybody. We are about to start part 3, chapter 3, which is page 260 in the paperback book. And when we left off, Winston was being tortured by O'Brien, and there was this moment where O'Brien came into the room and he went, "Your time to go to room 101. And Winston was like, "What's in room 101? And O'Brien was like, you know what's in room 101. And nobody's outright said what's in there, but in my previous video I mentioned that if you've been paying attention, you know what's in room 101. I know some classes talked about it and some didn't, but we have already been introduced to whatever's in there. So here we go. "There are 3 stages in your reintegration," said O'Brien. "There is learning, there is understanding, and there is acceptance. It's time for you to enter upon the 2nd stage." As always, Winston was laying flat on his back, but of late his bonds were looser. They still held him to the bed, but he could move his knees a little and could turn his head from side to side and raise his arms from the elbow. The dial, also, had grown to be less of a terror. He could evade its pangs if he was quick-witted enough. It was chiefly when he showed stupidity that O'Brien pulled the lever. Sometimes they got through a whole session without using the use of the dial. He could not remember how many sessions there had been. The whole process seemed to stretch out over a long, indefinite time, weeks possibly, and the intervals between the sessions might sometimes have been days, sometimes only an hour or 2. "As you lie there," said O'Brien, "you have often wondered, you haven't even asked me, why the Ministry of Love should expend so much time and trouble on you, and when you were free you were puzzled by what was essentially the same question. You could grasp the mechanics of the society you lived in, but not its underlying motives. Do you remember writing in your diary, 'I understand how, I do not understand why'? It is when you thought about why that you doubted your own sanity. You have read the book, Goldstein's book, or parts of it at least. Did it tell you anything that you did not already know?" "You've read it?" said Winston. "I wrote it. That is to say, I collaborated in writing it. No book is produced individually, as you know." "Is it true what it says?" "As a description, yes. The program it sets forth is nonsense. The secret accumulation of knowledge, a gradual spread of enlightenment, ultimately a proletarian rebellion, the overthrow of the party. You foresaw yourself that was what it would say. It's all nonsense. The proletarians will never revolt, not in 1,000 years or 1,000,000. They cannot. I did not have to tell you the reason. You know it already. If you have ever cherished any dreams of violent insurrection, you must abandon them. There is no way in which the party can be overthrown. The rule of the party is forever. Make that the starting point of your thoughts." He came closer to the bed. "Forever," he repeated. "And now let us get back to the question of how and why. You understand well enough how the party maintains itself in power. Now tell me why we cling to power. What is our motive? Why should we want power? Go on, speak," he added as Winston remained silent. Nevertheless, Winston did not speak for another moment or 2. A feeling of weariness had overwhelmed him. The faint, mad gleam of enthusiasm had come back into O'Brien's face. He knew in advance what O'Brien would say, that the party did not seek power for its own ends, but only for the good of the majority, that it sought power because men in the mass were frail, cowardly creatures who could not endure liberty or face the truth, and must be rolled over and systematically deceived by others who were stronger than themselves. That the choice for mankind lay between freedom and happiness, and that, for the great bulk of mankind, happiness was better, that the party was the eternal guardian of the weak, a dedicated sect doing evil that good might come, sacrificing its own happiness to that of others. The terrible thing, thought Winston, the terrible thing was that O'Brien said this, he would believe it. You could see it in his face. O'Brien knew everything, 1,000 times better than Winston. He knew what the world was really like, and what degradation the mass of human beings lived, and by what lies and barbarities the party kept them there. He understood it all, weighed it all, and it made no difference. All was justified by the ultimate purpose. What can you do, thought Winston, against the lunatic who is more intelligent than yourself, who gives your arguments a fair hearing and then simply persists in his lunacy? That was a long paragraph, so I just want to stop and kind of go over that. So, O'Brien asks Winston, what is the motive for the party? Why do they seek to maintain power? And Winston is just kind of lying there and he's thinking, and he goes, "Yeah, I know what O'Brien wants me to say. he wants me to say this big long paragraph. And he says, and it just seems really crazy that O'Brien is so smart and he knows all the pain and suffering that all the people are going through on a daily basis. He knows everything because he's in the inner party. He's here in the ministry of love. Like, he knows it. And he sees this pain, he sees this suffering, and he goes, yeah, it's worth it. And so Winston is just like, I just don't understand how I'm even supposed to argue with this, because O'Brien is so intelligent. And how do you argue with somebody who is more intelligent than you, and when you tell them an argument, they go, okay, fair argument, and then they continue on with like their lunatic ravings. And Winston just feels so powerless. He's like, I can't argue with any of this because it doesn't matter, because when O'Brien is still a lunatic and he will still just keep raving on his lunatic ways. So he's just kind of feeling a little helpless. Okay. You're ruling over us for our own good, he said feebly. You believe that human beings are not fit to govern themselves, and therefore... He started and almost cried out. A pang of pain had shot through his body. O'Brien had pushed the lever of the dial to 35. That was stupid, Winston. Stupid, he said. You should know better than to say a thing like that. He pulled the lever back and continued. Now, I will tell you the answer to my question. It is this. The party seeks power entirely for its own sake. We are not interested in the good of others. We are interested solely in power. Not wealth or luxury or long life or happiness. Only power. Pure power. What pure power means, you will understand presently. We are different from all the other oligarchies of the past, and that we know what we're doing. All the others, even those who resembled ourselves, were cowards and hypocrites. The German Nazis and the Russian communists came very close to us in their methods, but they never had the courage to recognize their own motives. They pretended, perhaps they even believed, that they seized power unwillingly and for a limited time, and that just around the corner there lay a paradise where human beings would be free and equal. We are not like that. We know that no one ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it. Power is not a means, it is an end. One does not establish a dictatorship in order to safeguard a revolution. One makes the revolution in order to establish the dictatorship. The object of persecution is persecution. The object of torture is torture. The object of power is power. Now do you begin to understand me? Now this is really significant because he's calling out, O'Brien's calling out all these other groups of people and saying all these other oligarchies were liars. They always said that they wanted power because they wanted the opportunity to make the world a better place and then release that power back to the people and everybody would be free and happy. And he says, we are not like that. We know why we tried to get all this power. We know what we're doing and we want power because we want power. But I think that all of this is very much Ingsoc, right? Just his end, object of power is power, persecution is persecution, object of torture is torture. It's not anything deeper. It's all surface level. Why are you torturing? To torture. Why are you persecuting? To persecute. Why do you want power? For power. You know, O'Brien's like, there's nothing anything deeper than that. We're doing it to do it. And that's the end. And I think that's kind of shocking because, you know, Winston is still at this point, even though he's been tortured for a really long time, he's still holding on to this belief that the party has power because they think that they are what's best for the people. And O'Brien essentially just said, nope, that's not it. We just want power because we want power. And I'll pick it up in the next video.